Okay, welcome everyone to 47 Steps, Step 2, which is ALS reversals are real. And isn't this cool? This is our second week of the 47 Steps to Healing, that we happen to have a real ALS reversal right here sitting beside us. So Stephen Shackel was diagnosed in 1994.
Officially.
Officially, yeah. 92 symptoms started, right?
92, I was diagnosed.
Oh.
Yeah,
But not like officially?
symptoms started back in 1990. And then I was told when I was in hospital and they were taking pieces from my leg and all the EMGs and even psychiatric evaluations. Because I don't know whether they think you're bonkers if you get ALS, but you're not, honest. Yeah, so I was told in the hospital while I just had a bit of muscle taken out of my left leg. I was told, I asked, what's the problem? Why am I here? Nobody's told me. And one of the junior doctors there flipped open the chart and he said, oh, you've got motor neuron disease. And I said, good, what the heck is that? And he said, well, all your muscles will fade away and eventually you won't be able to breathe or swallow or talk. I thought, oh, who is this guy? And he just raised his eyebrows, looked at me and didn't have any questions, so he walked off. He was looking at the pigeons outside the window who were doing pigeon things. It just completely turned me off like that. And I sat there with really big eyes and probably a dropped jaw. Like, what the heck was that? Where did that come from? So that was the first time I heard about motor neuron disease. And later when I spoke directly to the neurologists and the neurosurgeon, who was the primary doctor, carer, professor, anyway, the professors, he said, you have ALS. He specified ALS. And I said, what does that stand for? And he slowly said, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And I said, amyo, that's muscle-related, lateral, obviously, probably down the spine. Sclerotic is scarred. So scarring of the spinal nerves or nerves in the to cause muscle degeneration. He said, that's very good. And he said, I'd been told, I said, do I have to die in 2 years though? And he said, oh, well, that is the norm. And I said, is it mandatory? And he just sat back in his chair and roared with laughter. And his nurse came in to see what was going on because she knew what I was about to be told. So I was told, all the horrors of the world have descended upon you, but I decided not to, basically. I did go downhill very badly after that because it really hit me hard. I just built the house that we're talking from, designed it, built it, etc. And I just got married because we finally had a house to move into. And this was only about six to 10 months. It was less than a year after we'd moved in and got married, etc. I was told, you've got 2 years to live. And that really hit hard. And I actually went down that road.
It's up to you. You can stay.
Ended up in a wheelchair, which I used to hide under the stairs over there. I don't know whether we'll do a house tour in a minute. I just refused to have anything to do with it. I put a blanket over the top of it so you couldn't tell it was a wheelchair. And kind of went into denial, you know, the 5 stages of death or grief or Kubler-Ross, I think. Yeah. I went through all of those. And I just particularly didn't like this fancy wheelchair the MND Association had loaned me. They only ever get one on loan. They don't expect you to live long enough to keep it. Yeah, so that was under the stairs. That's the only way I could leave the house because I got as far as the back garden, down a couple of steps into the back garden, couldn't get up. And this was as winter's going on. Where we are in Australia, you think it's hot and full of kangaroos. It's not really. Lots of kangaroos, but it's where we are, it gets very cold in winter. I was telling Scott and Tish, it gets down to -17 here. It did last year and a couple of years prior to that. I'd fallen on a sunny day in winter. And as soon as the sun goes down, it goes from really quite nice. I was only in T-shirt and jeans. It goes from quite nice to really, really cold, hideously cold. And I was lying there. The sun had gone down. I knew Vicky was working till past midnight. I thought I'd freeze to death out here. But a neighbor came in. She was a nurse, psychiatric nurse, various kinds of nurse. And I thought, she's got the music. You could hear the music in the car. Doof, 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 doof. Thought she won't hear me if I yell out now. And I'd fallen behind some rocks, some big rocks. And I called out, and as she got out of the car, I heard the door go clunk and the music go, and I screamed, Jen, Jenny, Jen. And she thankfully heard me.
Wow.
And came up, still couldn't see me until she got up the steps, because we're sort of on a riverbank. So she got up the steps to where I was and saw me lying there. I said, Jen, I've been trying for hours. I can't get up. And that really hurt. I felt so helpless and useless because I couldn't push myself up. And then when I did manage to push myself up, I couldn't get my legs to work properly to stand up.
Wow.
But being a nurse, she knew, she's only tiny too. She's about tissue size. She somehow got me into a standing position and we got back indoors, but that broke me. From then on, I thought, I can't do this. I can't do this disease. I'm not having it. I'm sorry. And that's pretty much the day I decided, no, this isn't going to happen. I didn't know how. I had no clue, no medical background at all, no research background at all. So I just started hitting the libraries. I went to Sydney and Canberra to the libraries there. I phoned people just completely out of the blue. They may be on the news or on the TV for some reason or other. I'd get the name, find out where they were, phone them up, talk to them. 9 times out of 10, nothing. Got nothing back from them. Or they would parrot the same stuff that I'd read in all the textbooks at the time, had what amounted to 2 paragraphs, all bad news. This is what you've got. This is how it progresses. You will die. The end. I thought, no, this is wrong. There's got to be more than this. Nobody knows about this. Nobody will talk about it. At that stage, I didn't have access to the research documents.
No.
Just what was written in extant medical books. So when the internet came to town, and we were lucky, Goulburn is a city, my city, it's a town, but it has a cathedral, so it gets called a city. It was, excuse me, Goulburn was going to be the capital of Australia. That was the plan. But the local farmers heard about it, got together, had a bit of a chat, and whacked their land prices up 5 times or something. So the people that were looking to buy the land to build the new capital of Australia went, oh, we can't do that. So they went 60 miles up the road to Canberra, and that's where they ended up building Australia's capital. No, it's not Sydney. It's Canberra.
So you were also, when you said at the beginning, people would ask you if you'd been drinking because your voice was.
Oh, yeah. The very first time, this is back in like 1990 or something. I phoned a friend had phoned me. I phoned back. They were out. So their answering machine picked my voice up. And my friend, who knew I didn't drink or do drugs or anything intoxicating, they phoned, or actually, no, they came and saw me and said, have you been drinking or something? I said, no, why? They said, your voice, we've got it on recording and you sound drunk. No, when was that? Yesterday? No. So we got in the car and went to their place so we could listen to their answering machine. And I did. And I didn't realize what was happening on this side of my face. And to this day, it feels sort of doughy. It's functioning, obviously. But that one of the tests that you've all had all together now, that one, I couldn't hold any air in this side. You start on that side and on the other. I had no idea, but it was affecting my tongue and my face. In fact, everything. I have an atypical form of ALS because it comes across my body instead of from here down or from the feet up. So mine, for some peculiar reason, goes across that way. So this was the first symptom. The next symptom, I was a cyclist back then. I had massive, strong legs. I was a lousy cyclist, but very keen. And we are on the train on the way to see Professor Dan to see whether I needed surgery on my neck, which he said I did, but nobody would do it. the legs started to go crazy. Sitting with my wife and a friend, they were sat opposite me, and my leg was all over the place. And being a big muscled leg, it was scary stuff. So I went into in between the two train carriages, what do they call them?
Mhm.
Things on a train. I went into between the two where you get off the train.
The two cars, yeah.
Yeah, and I put one foot down the step and the other foot up the step, and I was trying to stretch it out, but it was jumping and kicking all over the place. I actually broke into a sweat. It was that intense.
Wow, major.
And that was, I'd had minor fasciculations before, which you do if you're doing sport. I was about to say high-end sport. No, I wish.
But you did, because you were at the time cycling maybe 70 miles a day.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, 70.
we do.
Yeah.
Our training rides were 50, sometimes how far is that? 80 miles, sorry. It's all miles. This is how long ago it was. We converted to the metric system over here. So we went from miles to kilometers, feet and inches to meters and centimeters and millimeters. And yeah, we went, but we were still riding in miles, because the old milestones that used to lead in, Goulburn was like a central town for everybody that wasn't in Sydney or Melbourne. So you get these old stones beside the road with the distance from there to the post office in Goulburn. We used to ride to various milestones out of town. And yeah, and they were the kind of distances we used to ride. We'd go to Taralga and Crookwell, which will mean nothing to you, but it's a long ride and there are lots of hills in between. And that was our training ride. And that was good fun. Well, it was good fun for the people that were good on hills. I was good on the flat, or if we were sprinting, but lousy up hills. So I was very heavily muscled. I was very fit. When they took the piece of muscle from my leg, the surgeon called the train, well, I don't know, I call them chickens. All the chickens would come up, all the trainee doctors would come up, and he called them all in when my leg was flayed open on the thing. And they can't give you anesthetic because it pollutes the slides. So
very painful process.
it didn't actually hurt at the time, except when he said, "I'm going to cut the muscle now." And I said, "Fine, you've had your way with my leg anyway." It was sort of flayed open. He said, "But I can't anesthetize it." No. So he actually cut it with scissors. Wasn't so bad, but one of the reasons he called them all in was to show that I did not have any fat on my legs. And he said, "You will very rarely see this. You will see this in athletes. They have no body fat," which I didn't. I was muscle, and just muscle, basically muscle and skin. So I was very fit, very strong, and that changed very rapidly. So I went from that kind of activity to barely being able to get to the bathroom. And that happened pretty rapidly. The being in the wheelchair happened after that fall. I realized it wasn't safe to be out on my own, which is a horrible feeling. If you're an adult and you're used to doing what you do within a day, you find suddenly you can't do the simplest things. And it's, I don't know, it becomes very personal then. That's what it was like with me. It was a personal affront that I couldn't even walk into the back garden, which I loved. I love gardening, making a mess of it at the moment. But yeah, bad times. But from then on, when the internet came on and I could get in touch with universities, university professors, researchers who are actually looking into motor neurone disease, which is used in UK here and other countries. Motor neurone disease is a blanket term for the blanket term you use there, ALS, which is a more specific type of motor neurone disease. So I happen to have been diagnosed with ALS, but motor neurone disease is what we call it here. So if I say motor neurone disease, we'll be on the same page.
Yeah. So MND in the US is a sort of a less form of ALS. It's not as severe, but in the rest of the world, a diagnosis of MND is exactly the same as a diagnosis of ALS.
Yeah.
They just call it differently, but it is ALS. And so,
yeah, and there are sort of subcultures of the same thing. Motor neurone disease is like, I have a friend born on the same day as me, diagnosed the same month and year as me, still alive down in Victoria. He did lose his speech very early on, but that was the first thing to go with him. And he was a computer programmer. So he happily went to work for a number of years in the early days. But we used to talk a lot. He would share information that he dug up. Being a computer programmer, he actually helped me in the early days because I wasn't a computer programmer. Yeah, we used to swap ideas. He knew people, I knew people, I knew people in America. And some years later, of course, I met Scott and Tish, which was wonderful. I found that it's quite fascinating to find that, like yourselves, there are people in the world going through what I went through. There are people currently going through the horrors I went through with nothing, no feedback from doctors except bad feedback, no feedback from pals. I didn't know there was such a thing. We were told it was one person in 100,000. I think it should have been 2 in 100,000 is the correct figure. But that's a pretty rare disease. It's a real orphan Cinderella sort of disease, pushed into the corner. We'll deal with it when we get to it. And nobody was going for it. Nobody was attempting to do anything. The drug companies can't do anything because they work for profit. They have to work for profit. It may cost them $1 billion to isolate and present and distribute a particular drug. They need their money back. So they're not going to put it into ALS and things like that. Even if they did find something, there's not enough income.
Well, what I'd like to mention, a lot of people don't know that Stephen established the very first website for ALS, period, in the world. It was no one was communicating with each other. People finally had a place to go.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how he developed that on his own together.
Well, I had to speak to other people. And once I had the internet, I needed a website so that we could bounce ideas back and forth. They would send me things in an email that I could, I don't think I knew how to cut and paste then, but I'd edit it and then put it onto the website. As you know, this month I discovered that. And that's when I realized you really have to be very organized in what you're doing, because if you make a claim and you can't back that claim up with scientific or academic evidence, it's not worth making the claim. I know it happens now on the internet with social media. People can claim that the sky is brown and, you know, you'll be attacked by drop bears if you ever go to Australia. Sorry, this is a joke, the drop bears. If you come to Australia, you're bound to bump into somebody that would tell you, watch out for the drop bears if you go in the bush. No such thing. Yeah, so I've lost my plot now talking about drop bears.
What was one of the first signs that you encountered that, hey, maybe this is turning around? Maybe there's some light at the end because you were in a very dark tunnel.
Okay,
so
at that time, what I could do was put the laptop on my lap and literally type away, put things on the internet, read things from bear in mind, there was very little on the internet then. Now, if you've recently been diagnosed in the last few years, there are 100 sites on the internet that you can go to, either directly pertaining to ALS or in the general vicinity of it, neurodegenerative diseases, etc. None of that existed. And if it did, it wasn't always easy to get onto the people that were publishing that information. Again, I've lost the plot.
So anyway, Stephen has it's called Shackel. It was shackel.org. We are creating a new one called shackel.info because his internet provider was bought out by another internet provider, and we have not been able to get access to his information. So we're trying to get it.
A third lot have bought it out. So there's no sort of chain of evidence to get back to the time it just disappeared, went off air one day.
Yeah, so we're trying to get it back with the Wayback Machine, and we're working. I had a meeting actually earlier this week with our web person, and he's going to try to get it back. So he's creating a new website to copy it over, and so we can get the old information. But right now it's in process, not finished. But Stephen was very famous because you were, for a long time, the only website out there that showed any hope. Derek Swinard found you in 1997, found his website and said, wow, there's hope. And it completely turned him around. And he feels like he's alive today, partly because of you. And Gary also, you know, if it hadn't been for you, he
Mm,
wouldn't still be around.
Well, to be
There's
fair,
lots of people.
I'm alive today because of people like you. Had I got no feedback at all from anybody, I would have just gone down that road. I would have moved into the wheelchair permanently. I would have never bothered to go out again. I would have done none of those things because I'd been told it was impossible. I'm a survivor of extreme ignorance. Had I not been so bloody ignorant of what the disease does, apart from the bad news I was given by Prof. Dan and Prof. Corbett and various other professors, apart from that, the only things I learned about people surviving ALS, MND, cancer, MS, all of these different illnesses that are supposed to knock you out. Had I not had that feedback, I think I would have just thrown my hands in the air and given up.
Yeah.
So all of you have helped me indirectly. I would hope, I know with Scott and Tish, these people work like demons. They're unbelievable. They got here after a 26-hour flight and they were immediately here and getting charges for things and all, because all the electricity and stuff is different over here. It's 240-volt, different plugs, etc. And they were running around. I don't even know how they could stand up. They were so exhausted. And they do this all the time.
Scott was falling asleep.
After falling asleep, becoming unconscious through fatigue. Tish was up at what time this morning?
Yeah, we had it. So the early session this morning was at midnight. So I had to get up at 11 to get ready for that one. And so I got up, but I did go back to sleep afterwards.
I think would have been no session if it were me, honestly. The poor things, I was so worn out.
By the way, we're skipping next week, just to let you know, because we are actually going to be in the airplane and I can't get up in the middle of the night and do it because we're on the plane. So, next week.
I will be honest, I was actually falling asleep yesterday while talking to Stephen.
Like in the middle of talking, actually talking and going, ugh. Oh dear, oh dear. No, these
Anyway.
are very hardworking and committed people. I've
You
known
guys
them
are
for
so
many
sweet.
years. They check everything. They're very good at what they do. And I believe the information on their website and this sort of thing is accurate. And as I say, I was taught to be accurate because you make a statement, you can't back it up. It is trashed and you're written off in the academic community.
So Steve is he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, because again, you put this together and right at the beginning, you said within the first 6 months, you knew it was the gut. You had to heal the gut, you had to heal the liver, and there was, yeah. So talk about that a little bit, just because you figured it out.
Well, I go back to Scott's question, which came back into my head after the drop bears. When did you first realize it was turning around? Is that correct? Yeah.
Vicky, you want to come say hi?
Oh, my wife is just on her way to the hairdresser, so I don't know whether she wants to be on camera. She will come in just a minute. It started to turn around incrementally. I was keeping a daily record of all the symptoms that I had, the number of fasciculations, the intensity of the circulations, 1 to 10. I says circulations, fasciculations, yeah. The number, the intensity, whether there was pain, whether I had noticed any increased denervation anywhere on my body, how my speech was going. All of this is a chart that I filled out every single day. At the end of that, I'd count all the numbers up and give myself a score for that month. I realized after one of the things I did find from Germany, and the man didn't speak English and I didn't speak German. He was a doctor and he was taking massive doses of vitamin E, but via another person whose wife had MND. He was German, so he translated and said huge doses of antioxidants seemed to be working for me. Now, vitamin E isn't a particularly good one. It's lipid soluble. It gets into your body, but you can take as much as you like, really, and it stays at one level. The same as vitamin C. You can take vitamin C and potato. Yeah, the vitamins like C, for example, you can take as much as you want and it will just be excreted. Your body can only tolerate a certain level. It's the same with vitamin E, but for different reasons. I thought, well, this is the only positive information I've got. A doctor in Germany is taking antioxidants. Why is that? Of course, there was nothing written about it. So I couldn't look at an ALS site or ALS research and find out why antioxidants might work. So I had to study the whole concept of antioxidants and then come back and apply it to the central nervous system in human beings. And I found one of the better antioxidants at that time was grapeseed extract or pine bark extract. All of those, pycnogenol was a famous name at the time. It's an oligomeric proanthocyanidine. I'm sure you'd be delighted to hear that. So armed with this information, oddly enough, I don't know whether any of these things are accidents in the big picture, but I found a company that sold this product, grapeseed extract, and they became very interested in my research. They came and met with me and they said, we'll sponsor any supplements that you need. So I went from using grapeseed extract as my primary antioxidant. And you'd see on my website, I also, from a doctor, found that a drug that's available by prescription is, I'll get back to you on that, but don't take it anyway. I was prescribed something that would act as an antioxidant. And I was taking those for my study. And then these people came on board and said, oh, we could also give you this to try. I thought, well, there's a great idea. Let's incrementally add these things and see what it speeds up or inhibits. Well, that was me gone for the next 10 years. Because, excuse me, barking. I don't know why this is happening.
Can you get him a glass of water?
I'll get water.
And I started a recording day. Every month I would put on the website, I am going to try this month and see whether there's any sort of quantitative difference between 1 month and the next. And so I went through a whole slew of things. A number of them actually made me worse, which, oh, thank you, Scott. See if this kills the frog.
By the way, while he's drinking his water, that's why the registry is so important, because it does what he does. It did it in paper, but it keeps a record of what you're taking, what you've added this month, what you've taken away this month, and then how is it effective? The reason that you're taking your ALS-FRS and the ALS-SQ is that it gives you an idea of how physically, and then you're like, wow, wait a minute. I went down a little bit, but I added these things, or I went up a little bit and I added these things. So it's going to give you an idea. That's why the alsregistry.org is so important for you to write down. Part of the reason that Steve is better is because he is writing it down every single month and noticing keeping a record and noticing what's working and what is actually something maybe works.
Oh no, they made me sick. They made me really ill. Some of the daft things that I took. I mean, they weren't crazy. It wasn't like I took bleach or something.
And back then, Tish and I had never seen a record like that before until we've seen Stephen Shackel. It was the very first one. Or wait a minute, he's keeping a log of everything that he's doing.
Yeah.
And we were
got how many years of records?
We were surprised.
I think I gave up around about 20.
20 years.
20 years. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Then it became sort of superfluous. It was irrelevant because my symptoms had, to a great extent, reversed. I'm not completely, I don't know. I still have ALS, basically. I've seen other neurologists and neurosurgeons and so on within the last 12 months. And they told me, yes, you have lost strength. It's particularly bad on your left side, etc. But I've still got function of everything.
Functionality.
And even though this is doughy, I hope you can understand me, despite the accent. Yeah, I can still speak, swallow normally, etc.
Tell me about the time you went to the hospital and because one side didn't have any muscle and the other side did, and they called the students.
Oh yeah, no, that happened a lot. The students love me because I'm unusual. There are 2 professors that were involved.
By the way, a professor in Australia is like a doctor. If you have it's above a doctor.
Oh yes,
right.
They train the doctors. They teach the doctors. They're always with a university and a hospital, and they teach the doctors coming through. And Professor Dan was the doctor in the world, like he was chairman of the neurosurgeons, an enormously long title. He had laws changed over here, seatbelt laws, crash helmet laws, and so on. He had that much clout. He was that well respected. And I must say, I saw him initially for a spinal injury where I was flipped off the bicycle by a truck, broke my upper and lower spine. So a lot of the confusion in diagnosing me in the early days, I've got so much to say, the words aren't coming out fast enough. Yeah, a lot of problems with diagnosing me initially was that I had this upper and lower spinal injury plus brain injury. And so they spent probably a year trying to rule those out as being a potential cause of what I had. They were looking for tumors. They were looking for, well, trauma, basically, signs of trauma in my body. No MRIs back then. No such thing as an MRI to look at you. You used to have a hideous blooming thing where they'd inject some nastiness directly into your spine. And they knew if it was working when you screamed in pain. And Professor Dan was the first person I came across. In fact, he was part owner of a company next to his rooms that owned one of the first MRIs in Australia. So I was trotted off there. They've come a long way, MRIs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what do the students want to see when they showed you off to the students?
The various things. When they showed me off, they called the students in because I had no body fat. And the surgeon thought that this was most peculiar. He'd not seen this very often. So that was the main reason that students were calling when I was being operated on. They may have called students in at other times, but it was a general anesthetic. So I've got no memory of any of that. You wonder what they do when you're under.
Right. Well, no, but then it was they wanted to show when you were walking around or with your walk or whatever it is, about the size.
Oh, yes. Because I was so heavily muscled, when the muscles started to atrophy properly, it was like a stick leg and a healthy muscular leg. And so they get me to walk up and down hallways in my underwear so that the students could look at the healthy leg and the skinny leg. It did go across to the right leg eventually, but the skinny leg was terrifying. I had no idea, because you generally get up, you have a shower, you're not checking yourself out, especially not at a distance. So them watching me up and down the hallway, I thought, what are they looking at? I thought it was my walk, because as you lose strength in one leg, you tend to favor the other one. So you're walking crookedly. I had hip pain because I was walking lopsidedly. Yeah, so they were forever calling in groups of chickens to stand around and watch what I was doing. And again, I was unaware at this time that I had ALS. Nobody had actually told me.
So do you have one leg more skinny than the other now?
Yeah.
Are they the same?
It's not as noticeable now because I'm not super active. I'm certainly not riding the bike because of the neck injuries. But yeah, you can see quite a big difference between right leg and left leg.
Yeah. But you can't tell, like when yesterday he was walking around the garden. I mean, you cannot tell he's got ALS. You really can't.
Because I'm an idiot.
Perfectly normally.
I inherited my kidneys, apparently. I've got polycystic kidney disease, which can only be inherited. And that is it's difficult to excrete all the acids and what have you from your body. So they accumulated in my shoulders and hips and my elbow. Oh, that was hideous. Hands, feet, obviously, as they come out as gout. And then I invented a new one where the damn gout got in my neck. And I was told by the rheumatologist it's called pseudo gout. And it's a different kind of acid that isn't excreted by your inherited kidneys. Yeah, so I had pseudo gout in my neck, which was like a death sentence. And this is recently, this is in the past year. I also had surgery on my gallbladder. This is a very long story, I'll skip it, but let's say I had surgery, life-saving surgery, as it turns out, but on the way in or on the way out, the mesentery, the bag that contains all the plumbing, became infected. So I got a round tummy at the moment, not so much because I'm fat, but because of this this thing. And I won't take antibiotics unless I literally have to be on death's door. I was on antibiotics for a couple, blimey, best part of a month, I suppose, because I had the beginnings of septicemia. Anyway, that I didn't want to get into that, but that is why I was sore and shoulder. I decided in a fit of pique one day, I was upset about something. I will flip my mattress. Well, I can only use one arm and then only up to about here, there. I couldn't get higher than that because it was too painful there. Couldn't use this arm at all much. I could sort of lean against it, but I couldn't bend it. But nothing to do with ALS. This is a new thing. And I started flipping the thing, got part way through and thought, oh dear, something very bad has happened. And I crushed a nerve in my lumbar spine. So that affected the peroneal nerve, which if you've done your homework, runs down the side of your legs. It's a lateral nerve. It sort of bifurcates off the sciatic nerve. That controls whether you can lift your foot or not. So I had foot drop, which is one of the symptoms of ALS, bizarrely, which I'd never had until this year. Oh, the last 12 months. I keep saying this year, I forget we're in 24. But yeah, so that is why I'm sort of a bit limpy at the moment. But generally, I was walking a few kilometers, I don't know, mile and a half, 2 miles a day, just to keep the little dog happy. So.
Yeah. So you pretty much, I mean, you can't, I mean, it's just walking around and making coffee and getting drinks and everything. You can't tell that he's got ALS today. And it's been 30 years. It'll be 30 years in February next month.
30 years since the written diagnosis and 32 years since the doctor that was looking at the pigeons offhandedly said you have motor neuron disease and you're going to die. So it's 32 years since I knew about ALS.
Yeah. And how old are you now?
Getting really ancient. Put fingers in ears, children. 72, going on 73.
Okay. All right.
28,
Yeah,
72.
there you go. There you go.
28, 72.
Yeah. So diagnosed, officially written diagnosis in 1994 when he was 42. So that's 30 years. So that's fantastic. And the other thing too, right quickly, you told me that you figured out really quickly that the gut was key, the liver was key.
Well, early days ago.
Antioxidants. And that was really quick. And it's interesting because
Yeah.
we know that today. So here it is 30 years later.
Yeah.
And we know the gut is key, the liver is key, antioxidants are really important. So
because there was nothing on ALS per se, you just got, peripheral information. I started looking in books initially because there was no internet, started looking in books at how ALS or neurodegenerative disease, they don't seem to have a word for ALS in Chinese, for example, but in traditional Chinese medicine, they always treat the liver first. And I have a friend who studied in Beijing and is an acupuncturist and various other things. He actually teaches anatomy, I think it is, at Canberra University. He commutes between Goulburn and Canberra. And he's a very clever man in many, many ways, but he studied in China. And he said they always treat the liver first for anything to do with the nerves and he explained all of that. And I thought, that's interesting. Where did medicine start? So apart from ALS research, I started looking when the internet came. Where did medicine come from? How did we end up with these definitions of things and words for things? So I had to learn Latin, like word roots and combining forms. I had to learn those to find out what, like a myotrophic. Myo is muscle. Anything with myo is muscle. Trophic atrophy. You take those two things. Lateral, obviously, sides. Sclerotic, sclerosis. That I was a very keen gardener, and I noticed that some of the plants had that sclero sound in, and obviously lateral this and blah. So I had to learn all of that as well. But I found through doing that medicine pretty much started in Arabic countries, and some of the things that are in medical books to this day started out hundreds of years ago, or even thousands of years ago, I suppose, in the traditional Arabic things. And one of the things that made me laugh at the time was they don't say, I love you with all my heart in Arabic countries. They would tend, if they said that sort of thing, they would say, I love you with all my liver, because they consider that to be the most important organ of the body. So that was one of the first things they would treat with whatever they treated it with. So I had two things now, ancient Middle Eastern medicine, Indian, the Ayurvedic medicine. They treat the liver as well for neurodegenerative or any neurological things, stress, poor sleep, all sorts of things. Your liver gets treated. Headaches, they'll treat your liver.
Yeah, and you said you found milk thistle fairly early on.
Because of the company that was supplying me grapeseed extract. They said, wow, liver, that's interesting. We've never heard that. I said, well, that's fine because nobody has. Well, why don't you try milk thistle? So that's one of the things I started early. And one of the things I stuck with was milk thistle, which is St. Mary's thistle is another name for it. Very good. And even in hospitals, like traditional Australian and English, actually, now that I come to think of it, if you have, I think it's either alcohol poisoning or some kind of nasty drug poisoning, they will give you milk thistle as part of your treatment.
For the detox.
Yeah, to help you detox. So not only is it several thousand years old as a treatment for the liver, it's a current one. So you can bank on that. And I have for a number of years, well, 30 odd years I've been taking it. I'm not taking it at the moment because I ran out, but and you can also find it growing. Like on the internet now, you can go milk thistle. What does it look like? And you can do a comparison. You might find it growing in your garden, but it's much more convenient if you just get the tablets, and they're fairly cheap. It's not a difficult thing to produce.
Yeah.
Grapeseed extract became very, very popular about 20 years ago, and you couldn't buy the stuff because everybody was buying it and it was never in stock. But now you can buy it very cheaply online.
Yeah, and now we have ashwagandha. That's another antioxidant.
What is that one?
Ashwagandha.
Oh, ashwagandha. Yeah, a lot of those. It doesn't really matter what antioxidant you take, but I will put a caveat in there. If you're taking any kind of supplement, your diet will have a massive effect on it. Vitamin C is the obvious one. If you take vitamin C and have, I think something just blew up. If you take vitamin C, you'll get a level, like a measurable level of effect from the vitamin C. If you take vitamin C with an apple, you virtually double, it's just slightly double the effect it has on your body. If you eat an apple or an orange or something, a fruit of some kind or vegetable that has vitamin C in it. Vitamin C's through a lot of vegetables. It gets destroyed very easily in processing food. The majority of food that we eat in the Western world is processed to some extent. Processing isn't a bad thing, like fermenting and pickling and smoking and salting. All of those things are processing food so that you have food in the winter when you can't grow it. So that's been going on for thousands of years. Processing isn't bad. The ultra processing that's done now is not only bad, it's actually physically harming you. So one of the changes I made early on, and it's now coming to the fore, who doesn't have a pen and paper? If you've got a pen and paper, look up Van Tulleken, VAN space TULLEKAN, Van Tulleken. Chris Van Tulleken is a doctor. He works on the TV sometimes. He's quite a handsome English doctor. He has a twin brother. So a number of the research things that he does, he includes his brother as his twin because he's genetically identical. And one of them will do a thing and the other one will do a different thing. And they see which comes up better. It was through that process for a TV program that he came across ultra-processed foods as a concept and realized how much of his intake was ultra-processed. He ate only ultra-processed foods, like the fellow that did that wonderful documentary on eating Macca's, what's that, McDonald's food.
Oh, yeah, I remember him. That was like Pollan, was that Pollan? Michael Pollan? Not
No.
sure, but there was
Anyway,
another one.
there's
Yeah.
one of quite an entertaining documentary, and even somebody else I'll tell you about. I mentioned Chris Van Tulleken, Ultra Processed Foods. He does a number of podcasts and things with other people. Tish might put something.
I'm just putting it on the chat.
Doing a clever
Food,
typing
yeah.
thing here.
I'm just gonna put it on the chat, but I may not have the spelling right, but at least it's
Fat and nearly dead.
oh, that's a different guy.
who had been-
Yeah, that's a different guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
different guy. But
the fellow that ate fast food, which would be KFC,
Fast Food
McDonald's.
Nation, there was somebody who wrote Fast Food Nation.
Yeah, that
too.
was a later one.
Okay.
Is that Supersize Me?
Supersize-
Supersize it? Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
That was the first of a series of them. There have been recent ones. One of the other people I would really like to tell you about is Professor Tim Spector, just as it sounds, TIMSPECTOR, Tim Spector. He's a doctor. I think he's a rheumatologist. That's his specialty. But the main thing that he does is an epidemiologist, and has been awarded by the Queen in England. He's like one of the top men in his field. He couldn't work out why he was getting so many people at his clinic that were overweight, low on energy, sleeping badly, diabetic, and so on. He could not work out why that was happening. And so as an epidemiologist, he started looking at the broader picture. And when he started looking at the broader picture, he realized that there was no scientific evidence that ultra-processed food, junk food, fast food, anything that comes in a box pretty much will not be good for you. And in some cases, it's been processed to the point where it becomes bad for you. He will explain this at length. He wrote the scientific book on the subject of what happens to the bacteria in your gut, your microbiome. And the microbiome is possibly the thing that could reverse your ALS if you have ALS, or your partner's ALS, or whomever. It means that there are certain things you will have to attempt to avoid, but if foods are processed to sell them to you, and it's very often for the benefit of the I'm trying not to get too sort of political about all of this, but the major food corporations, they will sell you things because it makes you money. Any corporation anywhere. I like Apple computers. I have an Apple computer. I think their computers are great. As a company, they are horrific. And I will openly say that, and I hope the world listens. They just want your money. That's all. They should change their name. Apple, we want your money. Now, the big food companies, and there are only 14 of them, I heard recently, in the USA, for example, that supply the majority of your food, except freshly grown food. And if it makes them money to put things in a box that they can stack neatly and will go neatly on the supermarket shelves, and they can put a picture on it that bears no relationship to what's inside a lot of the time. If they can do that and make money, they will. And you can't blame them, because that's the corporate mentality. They have to make a profit for the people that invest in them. Now I'm getting preachy, so I'll stop.
Yeah, well,
But
the other
if you-
thing too, just to remember, is that it's in their best interest to make these things addictive, so that you want more and more of them.
Oh, heavens, you should hear these people go off. These are people that have done the science for years and years and years. They have done the science. They know that sugar is put into French fries. The French fries are small, so not only do they cook quicker, but they can spray them with, I think it's corn syrup and things like that to make them go brown quickly. The bread has got sugar in it. All of these bad sugars. I used to work in London in a scientific and technical publishers, which I couldn't see at the time how helpful it would be later in life. But because I've worked in publishing, I did editing, mainly graphics, but editing. I didn't realize that all of these terms I was reading and having to turn into English for mere mortals like you and I, all of that stuff I was learning then, I is good now. But back when I was working then, I believe we were the first publisher of a book called Pure, White and Deadly. I wasn't working on that book, but I was involved with the graphics for the cover of the first book. A doctor in England had realized that white processed foods were ultimately bad for us. Top of the list was sugar. And this has been glossed over. Your body craves sugars, and it craves fats, and it will have you going back for more. If you get a nice fatty desserts, obvious example, ice creams and things like that. They're full of fat, they're full of sugar, they're yummy, so you want more. Breakfast cereals are one of the biggest problems because they actually design them to make with the tastes and the things that your body needs.
So how did you heal your gut?
How did I what?
How did you heal your gut? Because you said the gut was
I
an
mean,
issue.
in the process of it, well, milk thistle was the beginning of it. The antioxidants were also a beginning of it. And the more I did, the more I realized that not only is it the liver, you can't divorce the liver from the gut, and you can't divorce the kidneys from the liver. So prior to all of this, I had not good readings on routine blood tests. I'd had not good readings for my liver. And they would say, you've got to do something with your liver, and then essentially tell me nothing. Don't drink. Well, I didn't. Don't smoke. No, I didn't. Don't do. I didn't. And I don't tick all their boxes, so they go, oh well, yeah, don't do it then. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And I drank plenty, or I've always drunk water. I don't know why. It just seems like a good thing to do. I start the day. Can you see the size of this? There's my head. 2 of those first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't drink cold water because you can't chug it down.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. So 2 of those before I did anything really. And I do that to this day, and I think it's a good practice. I'd keep, so that I could keep track of it for my charts, I would have a flagon of water in the morning, and I'd try to have it empty by the time I went to bed. I say try. I did have it empty by the time I went to bed because that's how much I drank normally. And there are books published, entire books and spin-offs around drinking water that you can look up on the internet. Your Body's Many Cries for Water was the first one I read. That was in Israel, I think, where at some point they were having yet another war. And they didn't have the medical things that they needed. So the doctor there would just give people water. They assumed he'd put drops or a tablet or something in it. And he found that they were getting better simply from having water. So you can write off 20 to 30% of that as the placebo effect, which is well worth looking into. The placebo effect it's almost a pejorative. It was just a placebo reaction that you did that. We gave you the red pills. It was the blue ones that actually cure you. You had the red pills, you got better. The placebo effect. As if you did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. It's your body saying, finally, I'm getting help from something. And your body ultimately will heal you. If it can, if the damage hasn't gone so far that the body can't cope, the body will step in and heal what is wrong with you. You can improve its chances of doing that if you give it the nutrients it wants. And you can't give it the nutrients it wants if you powdered it so fine that there's nothing for the bacteria to get onto. That said, if you're chewing anything, say a salad or vegetables or whatever, chew it properly. Don't go munch, munch, swallow, which is what I did for most of my life. Actually chew it, because your saliva starts a predigestive process and it alerts the gut that food is coming, and the bacteria presumably, woo, dinner's coming, and they get happy that you're coming, and your gut starts to excrete, your liver starts to excrete chemicals, your gallbladder will excrete bile to help dissolve, help cope with the fats and the acidity of digesting fats.
Yeah, and by the way, for the people that are on feeding tubes right now, that's why it's so important to take digestive enzymes.
Oh, yeah.
Along with what you're taking, because that you don't have that those chemicals that happen when you're chewing. So you do want to have digestive enzymes. It's a very important piece.
Very, very good point. I would say that probably within the next decade or so, we're given the speed at which things are progressing, since Tim Spector wrote the book on what digestion does to us, poor digestion does to us, good digestion does to us. Since he wrote that book, people are starting to jump on the bandwagon now. Chris Van Tulleken has actually worked with Phil Spector and actually contributes to a not-for-profit organization that he started called Zoe, Z-O-E. The reason Zoe, by the way, means life, I believe, in definitely a language of some sort. Probably Greek by the sound of it, Zoe. Yeah, it sounds like it. So that's why they call the company Zoe, but they have a podcast whenever. I don't know, I don't subscribe to it, but I think it's every week or every month they have a guest in. Chris Van Tulleken has been on there a few times. He's a contributor to Zoe. I didn't know this. I found this in retrospect. I recognize the name Van Tulleken's a good one to trip over. So.
Okay, so I want to get to some questions. And now, just to let you know, the reason that we're here in Australia right now is that we're here to film Stephen. So we're going to spend the day filming and probably into tomorrow, filming him for this documentary series that we plan on publishing in 2024.
I'm so pleased they're here.
Finally. So that's why we're here. And then Stephen's also written a chapter for a book called Healing ALS. And so you're going to have 10 stories. I realize we have 20 reversals now. And you won't all fit in one book. So now it's going to be 2 books. It's going to be part 1 and part 2, but he's going to be in part 1. So that you get all the details of everything that he's done. But while we have him live, let's take advantage of it.
What, you're going to kill me? You didn't tell me about this afternoon.
So now that we have him live, I just want to get to some questions. So I'm going to go to the chat, and they want to know where you are, Steve. We said Goulburn already, so that's
Goulburn,
great.
if you draw a line between Sydney and Canberra, Canberra being the capital, didn't we learn that, children? Yes, we did. So if you draw a line from Sydney to Canberra, we are about 2/3 down from Sydney or 1/3 up from Canberra, depending whether you work north to south or south to north.
Okay.
And it was Australia's first inland city.
So Karen asked, I had a muscle biopsy under anesthesia. So would that have contaminated the specimen?
No, if they do it that way, there's no, if they do it while you're awake, which they prefer to do, they avoid the nerves that go to the muscle that you had taken out. If they inject directly into the muscle, that will contaminate it. Because they prefer to keep you awake during these minor operations. Like the science of anesthesiology is astonishing. It's incredibly complicated. So they prefer to keep you awake if they can do it under local anesthetic rather than general. If you had it under general anesthetic, they would be able to take into account, especially now that it's been happening for many, many years, they take into account any contamination from general anesthetic. There will be some in there, but it won't affect your result.
Okay, so Susan asked, did you ever lose your voice?
No, my speaking got a bit as if I'd had a stroke. Now, I worked in broadcasting. I worked in radio, a little bit on TV, mainly radio, a lot of public speaking, a lot of lecturing, etc. So my voice was a tool. It was trained and developed, and I worked with my voice. So if somebody heard my voice not sounding like me, which is the telephone call, where they played back this slurring, drunken sort of sound that I was totally unaware of. So that's, I didn't lose my voice, no, but my speech was affected, and possibly is now to some extent.
Okay. Well, I can't hear it.
Well, I have to compensate if it's.
And I noticed it like with Kim Cherry a little bit. I noticed
Mm.
it with Derek Swinard, not with you. But you
Okay.
could just tell it's just a little bit. They've got,
Yeah.
95% of their voice back, but there's just a little tiny bit
Yeah.
of that slurring.
Mm.
Okay, so Karen asked, did you change your supplements each month, or how long did you stay on them?
No, I stayed on, to this day, I take the grapeseed extract. I think it's a pretty good thing to take. If I were getting absolutely everything from my diet, which is difficult to do unless you're extremely wealthy and you have a chef, as far as I'm concerned, it really takes a long time. I grow my own vegetables, but we had a dreadful spring and early summer, and we've hardly got anything this year. So I have to buy whatever I can get, wherever I can get it. And because we're not in the major cities in Australia, the fresh, in inverted commas, food that we get really isn't. It doesn't have that sort of life force that you get from growing your own or going to a farmer's market or somewhere where it's taken from the ground that day or the night before and brought to you. They are the best types of food for the types, what we need in our bodies.
Okay.
Did that answer? I forgot what I'm
Yes,
saying.
that was perfect. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, he told us 4 to 6 months before you really know if a supplement is working.
Yeah, and
unless, of course, it's making you worse, and then you go off it immediately.
Yeah. When it made me worse, I would stick with it till the end of the month, so I had the figures. I can't claim that the thing was making me sick. I had to show on paper that it was making me sick. So I wouldn't do it now, but like an idiot at the time, I thought, oh God, I've got to take more of these. Because I committed to taking it, I was then committed to taking it to the bitter end. And then I would stop.
Yeah, we do not suggest that. We suggest if you have a bad reaction in 2 days, take yourself off of it immediately. Don't wait.
A whole chunk of vitamin E. I knew the fellow from the MND Association, his wife had died from the illness, and he brought the wheelchair to me. And because we have free healthcare over here, or majority is free. If you go into a hospital or you're under a medical program, it's free over here. I spent time in almost the next bed to me was a woman who'd been in a major car wreck close to town. She was in hospital and absolutely overwhelmed, thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay for all of this? When she was told that she wouldn't have to pay, she cried, she sobbed. Everything all the treatment she'd had was free. So anyway, that's by the by. Sorry, I've got this thing about America doesn't have a health system, it has an insurance system. For the insurers and the drug companies. You pay for your drugs over there 5 times more than we pay for them over here. Why? Corporations again. Here I go. Stop saying that.
So 4 to 6 months. And then, so let's get to the next question.
Yeah,
I don't want to run out of time.
No.
Okay. Linda says, I went to my ALS doctor this week and said, by the way, Linda is one of our reversals in progress. She's one of the people that did the 47 steps last year. Where are you, Linda?
I want to point at you.
Linda, say hi. Unmute yourself.
Where's Linda?
You have to unmute, and then you can
Hello.
say.
Where is she?
I'm here.
You have to see your video. You have
I
to
can't
see your
see you.
camera. You got
I'm
a
from
video on.
Cleveland.
Okay, there's your
Don't
picture.
worry too much, love.
Hi.
Yay!
We still can't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, yeah, you have to move
I
your
can-
camera
I can
down.
see
There
the-
you go.
See the
Perfect.
top of your head.
Yeah. So Linda did the 47 steps last year.
Okay.
And because of that, she is now improving. So let's get to her question.
Hello, Linda.
I went to my ALS doctor this week and he said I was getting better. Isn't that cool? First thing out of his mouth was that it's not possible and I must have been misdiagnosed.
Absolutely.
They always do that.
Cannot tell you the number of times, even this year when I was seeing 3 neurologists in Sydney, plus the surgical professor and his various offsiders. The number of them that said, oh, surely you were misdiagnosed, or just outright said, oh, you didn't have ALS. You didn't have MND.
Well, that's what he said. And he wants me to go to either Salt Lake City or like Rochester, Minnesota or something and be reevaluated. And I'm like, yeah, no.
No. Well, they wanted me to. I think I became, as I say, they bring out all the chickens to stand around and peck around while they're looking at me. I think that should be ducklings, not chickens. But anyway, that what they will do if you get better. My records, I don't know whether this is on purpose or whatever, because when something goes wrong, I found when my parents were dying, they close ranks and files disappear. Sorry, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is what happened to me and my family. Something was wrong. I made a formal complaint because they told me to, and the evidence disappeared. The only evidence to disappear. The same thing happens in the UK. The same thing happens over here. So the Professor Dan, who originally gave me the written diagnosis of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, he was transferring everything to computer at that stage, which was a massive job if you have a big practice like he had. And they had one woman in charge of it who was absolutely hopeless. And everybody that she was involved with, including Professor Dan, lost most of their files. So his original letter, I have a copy of it, but his original letter was missing. His process of diagnosing was missing.
And as far as Stephen's diagnosis goes, I mean, he was the top MND doctor, the top neurologist at the time.
Main
So
man.
there's no question. And then of course we have people like Stephen Bishop that has 4 different diagnoses from 4 different neurologists, and he's playing golf again. So it's like, come on, guys.
I've read this story so often, or heard this story so often. Oh no, you must not have had ALS then. You've been misdiagnosed. To be fair, there is no single diagnostic test for ALS. There is no such thing. They can't give you a swab or something like that. And they will one day. They'll find out that there's a way to test it. But at the moment, all they can do is exclude things like MS, exclude things like brain injury, exclude things like spinal injury, as they did with me. But it takes time and it takes a lot of work and it's very expensive.
Yeah. So just to be very clear, we believe that every single one of you has you believe that also, every single person here has the ability to heal.
Oh gosh, yeah. Your body will try to heal. I mean, it does to a minor extent. Lizards lose their tail, grow a new tail. Starfish will lose everything and just from the tip of one limb grow a new starfish. We can't do that. We're far too complex an organism. If we live for 900 years, possibly we could do that. Your liver replaces itself. You can lose half your liver and grow half your liver back for reasons that nobody can explain, except by going, oh, that happens with lizards and it happens with starfish and it happens with jellyfish and so on. Your body heals itself. I got a cut here. It's almost gone. Wow. Had a cut here before Tish and Scott came. Gone. Your body is healing itself the whole time. You eat something and the lining of your gut is excreted. When it's done its job, it's excreted. Your sinuses and your nose. Why have you got sinuses? There's got to be a reason. Well, you're breathing all the time, repeatedly, and a lot of bugs and what have you are going into your body via your nose. So you've got hairs in there, you've got mucus in there. When you get a cold or influenza or something like that, the mucus says, don't want this. So that's why you get a runny nose. All of these are processes that are trying to either heal you or keep you safe from toxins and other things that are coming into your body. So yes, you can heal yourself given enough time, and depending on how much damage has been done to your body, you will heal yourself. Now, if you have ALS, there's nothing in science or anything that I've ever read that says exactly why you got ALS. My theory is that there are a number of paths that lead into the point at which neurodegeneration starts. So it could be toxins, but it can't just be toxins. It could be inherited. Maybe that's enough. It could be because the blood-brain barrier was breached when you had spinal surgery. It could be. It could be a number of things. It could be your diet, but not your diet on its own. Otherwise, this is a thing that I did. This was an approach I took early on in the piece. I read everything. Trust me, I read everything I could get my hands on. I thought, nobody is asking why so few people get this, because it's quite an exclusive club. The majority of people don't get this. If it were a bug that came to town, you'd find dozens, hundreds of people would have what you have. They don't. If it were purely your diet, odds are you're eating similar things to other people in the Western world. Why aren't they all getting sick? And so on and so on. I mean, you can extrapolate from there. Why aren't there more people with the disease that you or your loved one has? That's where I really started to get a handle on this thing. So start looking at the illness from that side. It's quite exclusive. I think it must be more than one thing that's impacting your system.
Right, we talked about a perfect storm. I mean, you have to have like
absolutely.
a few things going on together.
Can I borrow Scott for a second? Yes.
Oh.
Just from the tap, Scott, not from the fridge. Yes. Yeah, you have to have a perfect storm. So you find that some people, they've been exposed to toxins. I did any kind of work rather than get, they call it the dole here. What do you call it over there?
Welfare.
Welfare, yeah.
Or unemployment.
Yeah, rather than get unemployment or welfare, I would take any old job. Even though I was qualified, I had, thank you. When I left the UK, I had 36 artists working for me, a promotions department that I was working with, etc. I was well qualified. Came back to Australia, couldn't find the work I wanted because you don't have the population density. So I just worked in factories, I dug ditches, I worked on building sites. I did anything just to pay the rent. And one of the factories that I worked at for far longer than I wanted to was, I was right next to the room where they dumped great buckets of chemicals that had run off from the machinery. And it stank. It was hideous. You could smell ammonia in particular, but some other horrors there. And you'd look along this vast packaging factory. It made cans and etc. Anyway, you could look along it and it would disappear. It would go into a haze of rubbish coming off the machines, cutting oil and all of these things. I was breathing that in all the time. And towards the end of my working there, my nose would bleed freely every single day and repeatedly some days. Not because I had my finger up there, because I had big work gloves on. I was chopping up sheet metal. So my nose would just bleed all the time. And I think it was from these toxins. One day, the toxins they were putting in, it was like a big concrete trough. God knows where it went from there. I hope it didn't end up in the river. But they pour this stuff into the trough. And one day it just exploded. Spontaneously combusted. And the poor man that was just walking out was thrown up against the wall opposite. And we all had to go past that to get to the toilets there.
Yeah.
So that was horrible. I was breathing that in all the time. You could say, well, it came from that. I worked a lot with animals. I still do. And we used to drench sheep and cattle. They go through a bath of nasty chemicals to get rid of the various things that they had.
Anyway.
And we would be drenched in this stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot, and that, by the way, part of the reason that we're here is to get this down for our documentary, as well as a lot of it's in Stephen's chapter in the book. So let's go. You need to write a whole book, not just a chapter. But he's got his chapter.
Well, I've got a whole website. That's
yes, he has a whole website. So okay, so that's I'm just going to say, Brian. I think we talked about what he's been doing better. Antioxidants, heal the gut, heal the liver, mental attitude. And I want to talk about that because this was a huge shift. So you had told me once that you did all the physical things to buy you time so that you could mentally heal.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I had learned about the mind and body. I'd studied meditation techniques, various types of meditation techniques, and the principle of meditation, and got so involved in it that I actually ended up teaching classes with another friend. And we used to teach things, how to improve your memory, how to get to sleep, how to essentially take control of your body, how to meditate when you're stressed. Because generally you'll find that if you are stressed or upset about something, you'll find that You close your eyes, you try to relax, and it's running through your head. It's very difficult to remove it if you don't learn how to. So that's what I was teaching 4 years prior to any of this happening. And I got very, very distracted, which is, I got distracted by the illness. I got distracted by, you are going to die. I got even more distracted by, you are going to die horribly. It need not happen. I did not accept it. And everybody that I've spoken, where the hell did that come from?
I'm going to show you. I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, this is great. Heather, thank you, by the way, of putting that in there. So Heather put a note in the chat, and this is his website. You can keep it. We are going to, I don't know exactly what happened, but Heather created a copy of your website.
Oh, well,
We
I've
asked
got
her
a copy
to.
of it, but that
Right.
didn't get it out to the
Right,
world.
but she managed it. So we are going to move this over, and actually, I'm so glad you have this because we tried to do this with the web
Bless you,
diet.
Heather.
Yes, so
I've got
fantastic.
the HTML copy of it.
Yeah, no, this is great. So if you click on that, you can see all of the information on his website, and I will give this to our web person
Fabulous.
because we didn't have this before.
I
So
can
thank
give you
you.
all the files. I'll give you a USB.
Right. So we'll get there. We'll get there with the USB. We'll get his website back up. So you'll have all these details. Same thing, elaborate on antioxidants. That's on his website. Thomas asked Stephen.
The elaboration on antioxidants is take an antioxidant, take it regularly. But as with, if you eat an apple and take vitamin C, it's twice as effective. With antioxidants, get it in your diet. Green leafy vegetables, fruits, not the very sugary ones or dried fruit, but fruits generally are good. Vegetables, I think even potatoes have vitamin C in them, but most vegetables have antioxidants in them. But if you can bolster the antioxidant supplement you're taking by improving the quality of your diet, you'd probably look at your diet and go, my diet's fine, it's all healthy stuff. That's what I did for years. It was only when I found out about the intestinal microbiome, which is about 15 years ago now. It's quite a popular thing on the internet. Go to YouTube, put in Chris Van Tulleken, put in Tim Spector. I mean, he lectures at the Royal Institution in London. That's where I first came across him. And I came across him purely by chance. I'd already decided that diet had a massive effect on the body. And the reason it has a massive effect on the body is because of your microbiome. Every cell has the mitochondria in it that needs adenosine, or in fact, it produces, I believe, adenosine triphosphate, which is the fuel for every single cell in your body. Now, if the mitochondria isn't getting what it needs, you don't get adenosine triphosphate, you get a dead cell. And the cells need to talk to each other. This is a long, we could have an entire hour just talking about this. Cells only live in your body. There's a process called apoptosis. Apoptosis. It's pronounced apoptosis. I don't know why. I didn't write it. But it is the programmed cell death. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, say a cell in your body dies from, senility or something, it dies of old age, or it's simply not functioning properly. It needs to be removed from your system and you get rid of it.
Yeah. So look up ATP, look up apoptosis if you don't know what those terms
But
mean.
that will happen in your body. It will kill the cells because they need, they're not fitting in. Cells talk to each other. Hello, Bob. How are you today? I'm fine. How's Jim? Jim, hello. And if Jim doesn't answer, Jim dies and disappears from the body. Antioxidants help with that process.
Yeah, and they'll find a healthy cell to replace.
Yeah,
Jim.
absolutely. Jim's spot will become open, and they'll go, empty spot, there's an empty spot there, somebody else goes in. And they all start talking to each other chemically and electrically. Thomas
asked, Stephen, did you ever go see the doctors who said you were going to die?
Yes, I did. Oh, God, that was funny. Towards the end of my sessions with Professor Corbett, who wanted me back every 6 months so he could stick needles in my muscles and generally pull me around and make me uncomfortable. Plus the trip to and from Sydney is really horrible. Oh, no, it's not. It's okay. I don't like it. So he wanted me back there every 6 months. And in the end, I said no. But I turned up in a wheelchair towards the end because I simply couldn't. The hospital I was diagnosed at has got its own postcode. It's a city with hospital built into it. Massive place. He's in charge of the lot. Professor Corbett is head of neurosciences. And I went back there after 5 years. He's one of the people that told me I had 2 to live. I went back after 5 years. I wasn't in a wheelchair. The last time he saw me, I was. I did have a walking stick, but I wasn't using it. I took it with me. If I get exhausted, I get a bit wobbly, but and I just walked into his office and he looked up and he went, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" He was quite literally he recognized me because I'm one of the few patients that made him laugh. And I was adored by his medical ducklings. They saw him laugh and he snorted coffee through his nose. And I was wheeled back from the operating theatre into the neurological ward, and all the nurses and young doctors were clapping, yay, because he's a pretty dour old bugger. He's retired now, but he's pretty dour. You didn't often get any kind of emotional reaction on him. They're a strange species of human being, neurologists. You may have encountered this yourself. They can be very, very strange as human beings, let alone doctors. Yeah, have I been back? Yes, that was one. What the heck? What are you doing here? And he has never said you don't have. I've seen him since as well for some unrelated problem. And then I had to go to a different hospital. He retired, etc. But he saw me again. Professor Dan saw me again. But Professor Dan had been seeing me for my spinal injury. So he'd kind of seen the various stages I'd gone through. But the last time I saw him, we sat there and we just roared laughing. We chatted. And he said, anytime you're in Sydney, please drop in. You make my day. So we sat there and laughed. And he said, I'm so glad it didn't go the way we said. So, or words to that effect.
Yeah, and there have been people, I think it was Evie McDonald.
Oh,
She
yeah.
opened the drawer and they said, we already have you on the dead file. Like she went back 3 years later.
Yeah.
And they had already put her in the dead file. Like just assumed she passed away. So I said, we archived your file because we just assumed you were already dead.
That is the standard response. You were misdiagnosed. No, you weren't. You don't go through that. It took them over 2 years to diagnose me. There's no accident they came up with ALS. Well, they did find it as ALS and not a motor neuron disease. So must have been a pretty fair idea.
Yeah. And then how much milk thistle were you taking?
Just the recommended dose. There is no point for the majority of these things, vitamins, any, say supplements, there is no point taking greater than the recommended dose. You might take a bolus dose to start, which is a higher concentration to start, and then you taper off to the recommended dose. If you take vitamin E, masses of it, 5,000 milligrams, the German doctor was taking, you're excreting the majority of it. Vitamin C, take as much as you like. It will give you the runs. It will make you go, it will make you urinate because it needs to be out of your body. It doesn't live there. It's just part of a process. So, yeah.
Okay. So are there digestive enzymes in liquid hope? I don't know. Heather, do you know? But anyway, check if there aren't, add them. Okay. And I'm kind of thinking there might not be. I think you might have to add them separately. So just look it up or call the company. They will let you know. Okay.
Digestive enzymes, you do produce them yourself, but you may have confused the heck out of them by eating over processed food because your body simply doesn't recognize some of these chemicals you're putting into it. And I'm not a fanatic about, oh, don't eat this or don't come near me. You ate a nut yesterday. Not one of those. This is just through study, through decades of study, I've come to this conclusion. I had decided it was the intestinal microbiome 12, 15 years ago. Again, before I could find anything written on it. Now you can find heaps. Go on YouTube, type in intestinal microbiome, type in microbiome, anything you like, and there will be information on it.
Right. And Susan, this is a really good question, by the way. So I believe Dr. Cowden suggests pancreatic enzymes, certain enzymes, 10 minutes before the meal, 15 minutes before the meal, and another set during the meal. So review those. Those are on the Monday Q&As, and he's gone over that a number of times. But I want to get to Michael's customers. We're already over. We don't usually go this long. So let's just go through a few more. We're so honored to have you here. So thank you. My mom is on NAC with milk thistle. Her naturopathic doctor wants to take her off of it. She says one shouldn't take milk thistle for a long time. I don't want her to come off, but since my mom's husband is her primary caregiver, I have no control over the decisions. What sort of evidence do you have that I can present to convince her doctor to keep her on it?
It is a good idea to have something and get off it, to change one antioxidant for another antioxidant, like N-acetylcysteine, NAC, has high antioxidant values, plus a number of other things. So you can swap these things.
So we would suggest going off milk thistle for a period of time?
Yeah, and if you're recording this, if you have time in your day to record this, even if it's sort of mentally, you'll see whether you're having a problem with it. But if you stay on milk thistle for a long time, it's not so much that it would harm you, it just becomes ineffective. Like, oh yeah, I got that message, says your liver. And you're just not helping. And you start taking higher and higher doses of these things. A lot of these things, like selenium, is a really good thing to have in your diet. But you start taking selenium, it's deadly toxic. So you have to be careful. You don't want to overdose on these things. Try to stick as closely as you can to the recommended dose. Take a multivitamin if you want to take a supplement, but correct your diet as well, because a lot of these things cannot be metabolized.
Yeah, and if you're under, I think they've done studies of up to like 400 grams of selenium, you're fine. Like Leap only has 75. So it's just, don't panic with a little bit of selenium. It's fine.
400 grams of selenium, you are dead.
Well, that's what they said, but they did study.
No, it's got to be micro.
But again, this is what's really important, to do your own research, because we've had other people have done like, that's a lot of selenium.
Yeah.
You don't need them that much. But it's what's interesting is they've done studies long-term on up to that amount. And they said, look, it's not toxic. Now, if you go beyond that, it is. But they kind of found that 400 is the non-toxic amount. But if you go on more than that, and in general, you don't need that much anyway.
Yeah, it's got to be micrograms, like 10.
That's what I mean.
10,000.
I didn't mean milligrams.
No,
I meant micrograms.
I
I'm
know
sorry.
you're trying to kill more people. Keep that quiet.
You're right. Milligrams, you would be dead. So micrograms, I apologize. Yes. Okay. Next question. So again, you've got to look that up as far as evidence goes. You're going to have to look for it up. I mean, that's a question for Dr. Cowden on Monday. Michael, ask that one. That's a good question. What amount of GCE do you take, and what brand do you prefer?
No, don't know. I've never tried it.
Okay.
What is GCE?
How long? GSE. I'm sorry, GSE. I don't know what that is. Okay. Okay, you can put it in the chat. Okay.
Something enzymes.
How long guys, don't put letters, put real things. How long was Stephen disabled, and where were you at the most disabled state?
Early after the official diagnosis was when I had the fall. And that's what provoked me to do my own research, because I realized that nobody else in the world was going to do it for me. And like everything in my life, we couldn't afford a house. We couldn't say, here, bank, give us money. We want a house. So I designed the house. I did the legal stuff on the house. I did the plumbing. I did the electricals. I did everything. I managed the whole thing through 3 months of the house building. I was in traction in hospital with the spinal problem I had. I couldn't move, and I had a little A4 drawing board in front of me.
The point is that you healed from ALS on a very low budget.
Oh yeah, I didn't really have anything.
Right. And so he had to buy, obviously he was very careful with his food, not buying processed food, certain foods to stay away from. He got a company to sponsor him for his supplements. And he did a lot of research and a lot of record keeping to decide which supplements to take and which supplements not to take. So that's, again,
I wasn't going to recommend something if I didn't have a really good grounding with it. Nothing went on my website unless I'd thoroughly researched it.
So Dale's asking, should I stop taking Riluzole, Radicava, and Albrioza before I begin detoxing and supplements?
Oh gosh. I think detoxing is important. Being on supplements isn't as important as getting your microbiome fixed.
What do you know about
to
have you
inspect
done
that.
research on the riluzole, Radicava, those ALS drugs?
Yeah,
What's your opinion?
nothing good came from it. Riluzole is they give it to you so they can give you a pill. It really, the efficacy of riluzole is not brilliant. It does help some people, but go back to this thing. Why do so few people have ALS? You need a perfect storm of pressures on your body before it starts, your nervous system starts to break down.
So there's also every single person who's reversed went off of riluzole, went off of Radicava. Even if they did try it, they went off it because they both damage the liver.
Yeah, they
and
do.
we're trying
They
to
attack
heal
the
the
liver,
liver.
and one of the primary things I had in my research is liver function. Gut function came later when I realized you cannot separate the two. So liver function, yes, it will show up there probably before anywhere else, but it's gut function and your gut microbiome that is affecting all of this. Get those right.
So Dale, talk to Dr. Cowden, also ask that, and you can ask that in basic Q&A on Monday and advanced Q&A on Monday. And I'm going to tell you what they're going to tell you, but you can go ahead. That we have no reversals that have used those drugs. In fact, those drugs long-term are damaging to the body. So you have to do your own research. You have to make your own decisions. You can ask other people's opinions, but just be very, very aware of that.
I don't know how many pals Tish and Scott have been in contact with, but up until the point, actually not, but I'd been literally in touch with hundreds of people with ALS, if not them, their families from all over the world. Thousands of people. I don't know anybody that benefited from riluzole. From my understanding of riluzole, if it does anything to the liver, I'm not interested. If you believe it's helping you, take it, but be aware it will damage your liver. They give you that because they don't expect you to be alive. They're not being nasty. They are hoping, because that's all they've got, they are hoping that it will help you. Even if it's the placebo effect of having a pill just for you, just for your disease, your body will heal itself if it possibly can.
You also need to look at the side effects of those drugs because, I spoke to one PhD, he said Radicava never should have been approved. If you really look at the science behind it, it never should have been approved. And look, one of the side effects is inability to walk. You lose your ability to walk. Well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Take a look at the side effects. That's all I'm going to say about that. Did Stephen do anything to mobilize your lymphatic system?
Well, generally your lymph system, I'm a snake and reptile handler as well, and you probably know Australia has the top 10 most deadly venomous snakes, and we get number 2 and number 4 in our garden, or even where Tish is sitting. So, yeah, one of the things you learn about is how venom gets into the system, and what you're advised to do if you're bitten by one of the elapids, which are the cobra family, except the Australian ones are more toxic than the cobras. If you get bitten, sometimes it's only a scratch, and the venom is so potent that you don't need to be bitten like with a rattlesnake or something. You just need a scratch on you. That will kill you. Wow. So the way it transports around your body, unless the fang goes directly into a vein or into your bloodstream, unless it goes directly into your bloodstream, it is transported around your body in your lymphatic system. And I don't know whether you can see this. I played guitar. Can you see that happening there, the muscle? Somebody nod.
Yes, we can see it.
Right. That process will pump the venom up your body. If I'd been there and I suddenly go, all of those muscles are doing all of that. If you get up and run back to your car.
So what's the point with the lymph?
Well, the lymph system is it's being pumped by movement of your muscles. So if you want to activate it, you have to activate your muscles. If you stay completely still, it will stop the venom pumping through your system. So that is how it's relevant to this.
And that's why the functional MDs, by the way, it will suggest a vibration plate or something to move your muscles. If you are
Yeah.
immobile, you need to have something to stimulate the muscles, or those TENS units to stimulate the muscles. It's very important to stimulate.
TENS would be very effective, actually. And you can get those very cheap.
Yeah, you can get it very cheap. Okay, so I think GSE is grapeseed extract. I forgot what the question was. How long did you take it?
I'm still taking it. I
Okay.
go off it from time to time. I run out and forget to buy more. Back in the day, okay, we'll go back to when I had manifest symptoms of ALS. I kept taking it throughout the study, so there's a good 10 years there. It did no harm. I never took massive doses of it. In fact, I never took massive doses of anything. It's sort of counterproductive.
Okay, so last question, because then we are going to get off. We've definitely over our time limit. Lisa said, I don't think you understood my question. How long did you have disability before you reversed, and what were your symptoms at their worst?
I was getting worse. I got rapidly worse after the written diagnosis. Prior to that, I was getting worse. I was measurably getting worse every time I had an EMG, etc. But after I was diagnosed and I was keeping records of what was happening, I think my worst disability was, if you take the time of diagnosis, when I went panic, up, gone.
Yeah, and that's
I
so
probably went
common.
on, yeah.
People do that. They go down like a rock after the diagnosis. That tells you the power of the mind, guys.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the placebo effect.
The nocebo effect.
Nocebo, yeah. So I was diagnosed. I was told how bad it was, how horrible it was going to be, and how long I had to live. Nobody wants to know how long they have to live, really. I continued to go down, and I got really bad after that diagnosis for a couple of years, to the point where I had to be in a wheelchair to leave the house. I had to have a stick or something to hold on to just to get from the chair. I'm pointing to my chair there, to the bathroom, which is there. What's that, about 5 paces? 6 paces? I don't know.
At the most 6.
I'd have to hold on to that chair, hold on to that, hold on to the wall, hold on to the door, and then grab the rail inside the bathroom. I could move, but I was so weak and wobbly, I called it. So weak and wobbly that I needed to hold on to things. That went on until I started my study, had adjusted my diet, had started taking grapeseed extract, and really paid very close attention to getting better. Prior to that, prior to the study, I was getting worse. That was my mental attitude. I'm getting closer to doomsday. Whereas after I started the study, I was actively looking daily, even hourly, to getting better. So my mental attitude changed. So within a month, I'd seen improvement. Within 12 months, I'd seen a massive improvement.
Yeah, so that mental shift was huge.
Absolutely. The mental side of it is incredible. If you read, there's a chapter, there is a chapter called Mental Attitude and there's also another one called Divorcing ALS, like give it the dog, give it the house, give it the car, walk away from it. You have to give up the life you had, give up who you were and what the disease is doing to you. You have to, at some stage, mentally walk away from it, and hopefully that will become physically walk away from it.
Fantastic. Thank you. What a great conclusion. Thank you so much. We're gonna close. We did a meeting this morning, so if you want the normal 47 steps, Scott will put the recording up, so it will be there for what we were supposed to do during step 2 today. But I'm so grateful.
I've ruined everything.
And we're so grateful. And what we're gonna do actually is I'd like to put this up on YouTube.
Do what you like.
That would be fantastic. And then it'll be up there for a lot of the pals. And I think, again, we're trying to get more of this out there, and you'll see more of Stephen in the book and the documentary series. And we haven't been able to get him on Sunday because it's 6 a.m. and you just don't function at 6 a.m., do you?
At the moment, no. I mean, I used to be out walking and so on at 6 a.m., but my sleep pattern has sort of gone the other way. I rarely get to sleep early, and then I wake up later,
So we're honored to have you. Thank you so much for all of your help. And that, again, that mental shift was really the beginning of healing.
Yes, absolutely. The mental shift is the key. Anything you do from then on fills in time until while you're getting better.
Yeah.
The mental shift is the key. The mental shift will make you well.
Yeah. You also told me once that if it hadn't been, you had all these hundreds of pals that you were communicating with, and you said you had to stay alive for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was odd. The mental attitude then was, I've got to stay alive. All of these people are watching what's happening to me. It's bizarre. Like in retrospect, that's what I thought. At the time, I just got on with what I was doing. I stayed alive.
Yeah. Well, we're
I had
glad.
reason to stay alive, and you've got reasons to stay alive. I bet your reasons are equally as good as mine was.
Yeah. So 30 years as of next month from the official written diagnosis of ALS. Thank you so much.
Don't
Thank
make
you,
the
thank
mistake
you.
of thinking I'm special. I'm not. I'm the same as you.
You can all do this.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
And thanks for
Bye.
listening.